The alarm clock. This word sounds like a verdict. An alarm clock. My phone vibrated on the bedside table, emitting a sound I hate with every fiber of my being. You know that feeling when reality bursts into your dream without knocking? I reached out my arm, groping across the wooden surface. Fingers. Right now, they were as clumsy as sausages. I found the snooze button and pressed it. To hit the snooze button. 5 more minutes of paradise. 5 minutes flew by in a second. It's time. I opened my eyes. Eyelids. They were heavy, as if weights had been hung on them. The sun was breaking through the loosely drawn curtains, its rays cutting into my retina. I squeezed my eyes shut. My eyelashes were stuck together from a night's sleep. The first thing I see every morning. The ceiling. White, dull, with a micro crack in the corner. It looks like a map of an unknown country. I sat up in bed. My back cracked somewhere around the lower back. Lower back. My spine reminded me of its existence. I lowered my feet to the floor. Bare soles touched the cool parquet. Feet. Don't confuse feet with legs. Legs are the whole limb. Feet are specifically the part you stand on. My toes curled up from the cold. The big toe, the one I stubbed against the doorframe a week ago, was still aching. A big toe. It had a life and an opinion of its own. I stood up. My body obeyed reluctantly. Muscles protested. Joints made quiet clicking sounds. My knees cracked as I straightened up. I felt like a robot someone forgot to oil. But I stood up, and that's already a victory. I looked around the room. Where's my bathrobe? A bathrobe. It hung on the back of a chair, crumpled and wrinkled. I threw it over my shoulders. The fabric was soft, almost familiar. The way to the bathroom lay through the hallway. I walked, rubbing my eyes. Don't rub your eyes too hard. It's bad for you, but right now I didn't care. I entered the bathroom and turned on the light. The bulb flickered on, and I saw him. Myself. The mirror forgives no one. It showed me a man of about 30 with a crumpled face and disheveled hair. Hair on your head. Hair. Don't confuse it with individual strands. On my head is hair. In the sink after shaving our hairs. I bent over the sink and splashed water on my face. Cold water is the best cure for sleep. Droplets ran down my forehead and cheeks. My cheeks are covered with light bristles. I ran my palm over my chin. There was already a prickly growth there. Another day or two, and it will turn into a beard. A beard. But for now, it's just stubble. Stubble. I touched my upper lip. A mustache was also sprouting there. A mustache. Nope, today I'm shaving. I took my toothbrush. A toothbrush. Squeezed out the paste. Toothpaste. A white strip landed on the bristles. And the ritual began. To brush one's teeth. Up and down, up and down. My gums were bleeding slightly at the base. The dentist said I pressed too hard. The tongue also needs brushing, but I always forget. Foam formed in my mouth. I looked at myself in the mirror. A mouth full of foam, eyes half closed. Not a sight for the faint of heart. I spat and rinsed my mouth. To rinse. The water washed away the remaining paste. I wiped my lips with a towel. A towel. Now shaving. I grabbed a razor. A razor. Sharp with 3 blades. Shaving foam. Shaving foam. I applied it to my cheeks, chin, and neck. The neck is the most dangerous zone. There's the Adam's apple there. Adam's apple. Mine is quite prominent, and it always tries to get under the blade. I began to carefully move the razor, scraping off the stubble along with the foam. I examined the result. Smooth skin, but a cut on the cheekbone. A cheekbone. A tiny droplet of blood surfaced. I pressed a piece of toilet paper against the cut. Classic. Now I look like a man who lost a duel with his own razor. But at least not like a caveman. I washed my face again. Now it was clean. The pores were open. Time to deal with the body. I threw off my robe and stepped into the shower stall. Hot water is a blessing. Streams at my shoulders, flowed down my chest, and further down my stomach. Stomach/belly. My stomach, by the way, is not as flat as I'd like. I call it strategic reserves. The water ran down my sides and further down my hips. My hips are wider than they were at 20, but I've come to terms with it. I soaped up the loofah and started scrubbing my skin. Armpits, armpits, the zone we're embarrassed about, but wash most thoroughly. I raised my arm, exposing the armpit. The muscle tensed. Arm, forearm, forearm, elbow, elbow. I scrubbed my elbow with a loofah. The skin there is rough and dry. Elbows betray our age. Have you heard that? I switched to the other arm. My shoulders were covered in foam. My collarbones protruded under the streams of water like mountain ridges. Now lower. I bent over and soaped my calves. Calves. The leg muscles were tense after yesterday's jog. Calves are the most enduring part of my body. My thighs are powerful, covered with light fuzz. My knees creaked as I crouched to reach my feet. Feet came into focus again. I washed between the toes thoroughly, just like my mom taught me in childhood. My heels were rough, in need of a pumice stone. My back was itching after the hot water. I turned around, exposing my shoulder blades to the streams. My spine ran in a groove from my neck down to my tailbone. My lower back was aching slightly, reminding me I need to buy a proper mattress. I rinsed off, washing away the foam. The water turned cooler. I turned off the shower. Steam enveloped the mirror. I stepped out onto the mat, leaving wet footprints. I grabbed a towel, one for the body, big, terry cloth. I rubbed my skin until it turned red. Now a face towel, smaller, softer. I dabbed my forehead, cheeks, chin. My hair remained wet, droplets running down my temples and behind my ears. Ears. My ears are slightly protruding, inherited from my grandfather. The earlobe, I touched it, cold. You need to dry behind the ears especially carefully, or you'll catch a cold. Now the hair. Hair. I looked in the mirror at my wet mop. It was sticking out in all directions. A parting was completely absent. I took a comb, and started combing my hair. To comb one's hair. The strands wouldn't obey. I have thick hair, and after washing, it resembles an impenetrable jungle. I ran the comb from my forehead to the back of my head. The nape, hair always tangles into knots there. I pulled, and a couple of hairs stayed on the teeth of the comb. I decided to style my hair with a hairdryer. It roared, blowing out hot air. I aimed the stream at the roots. Hair roots. Strands flew up like crazy. I used my fingers instead of a brush. My forehead was revealed. The bangs or fringe, if you're in Britain, fell to the side. Did I fix the result with hairspray? No, I'm not that vain. Just styled it with my hands. I smoothed down my temples slightly. Facial care. I'm not a cosmetics fan, but I have a basic kit. Face cream, moisturizer. I squeezed a drop onto my palm and started rubbing it into my cheeks, forehead, and chin. The skin under my eyes required special attention. Fine lines were already forming there. Wrinkles. I rubbed the cream in with my fingertips, using light patting motions. Now deodorant. A couple of sprays under the armpits. I raised my arms. My armpits were smooth after the shower. A fresh scent filled the bathroom. I cleaned my ears with a cotton swab and immediately scolded myself. Doctors forbid it, but the habit is stronger. I inspected my nails for dirt. Clean under the nails. My fingernails are neatly trimmed, but the toenails need a pedicure. That's for another time. I came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel and headed to the wardrobe. Time to get dressed. First thing, underwear. Boxers or briefs. I prefer boxers. They're looser. Socks. The pair that came to hand turned out to be different colors. I sighed and went to look for matching ones. Socks should match, but mine live a life of their own. Trousers. Pants/trousers. Dark blue, classic. I pulled them on, fastened the button and the zipper. A button and a zipper. A belt. A belt. Leather with a simple buckle. A buckle. I threaded the belt through the loops. Belt loops. My stomach slightly hung over the belt, but I sucked it in. My abs were almost absent, but the muscles remembered they were once toned. A shirt. Light gray cotton. I slipped my arms into the sleeves. Fastened the buttons on my chest. The collar I left unbuttoned on the top 2 buttons. It looks casual but stylish. At least, I convinced myself of that. The cuffs I fastened tightly. I don't have cufflinks, just regular buttons. I tugged the shirt down, tucking into my trousers. Shoes. I sat down on the poof in the hallway and pulled on my boots. First the right, then the left. The shoelaces were undone. I tied them into a bow. To tie shoelaces, the knot was double, so it wouldn't come undone during the day. The sole was slightly worn down at the heel. I tapped the heel against the floor, checking if the foot fits snugly. Fits like a glove. The final touch. I looked in the hallway mirror. It reflected a man almost ready to go out. I ran my hand through my hair, adjusted my collar, checked my teeth in the reflection. Any toothpaste left? No, clean. I smiled at myself. My teeth were relatively straight. The smile came out crooked but sincere. I winked at my reflection. To wink, I put on my jacket. A jacket. My shoulders straightened. My back became straighter. I grabbed my keys from the console table. Phone into my pocket. Wallet into the other. I'm ready. I cast a farewell glance over the apartment. In this home, I leave my morning vulnerability. I step out into the world assembled, combed, and clean. Well, almost, because the real assembly happens not in front of the mirror, but somewhere inside, behind the ribs. Ribs, where the heart beats. And if it beats steadily, then the morning was a success. Learn the parts of the body, friends. They are your main tools. And as long as you can move a finger, wink, and say, I'm ready, life goes on. Now, forward to meet the day. And don't forget to smile at your reflection, even if it's crumpled, especially if it's crumpled.